Howdy, folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good evening. Happy Monday. I call it Monday morning grind, even though it's not Monday morning grind. It's already, if you're still grinding, it's evening. Well, even better for you. And tonight, folks, we have a treat. We have such a treat. This is the first of many Q&As that we'll be doing. And you have to wear a cowboy hat in order to be part of the Q&A. So cowboy hat, check. Really quick, I want to introduce our guest. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Sunny Sauceda. I'm the Director of Music and Heritage for the Texas Folklife. And we're super excited to have this amazing woman that I had the honor and privilege of meeting about 2 weeks ago, 2 weekends ago. And her name is Marisela Barrera. And really quick, I want to talk about her, hype her up. Like, so if you're watching, just scream and just like, yes, Mari, Mari, Mari. And Marisela Barrera is a renowned Tejano storyteller, actress, and cultural activist based in San Antonio, Texas, with the career rooted in preserving and celebrating Tejana and Chicana narratives. Her work blends tradition, humor, and cultural insight. A dynamic performer and creative writer, Barrera has held leadership roles in the arts, including artistic director of Caramia Theater and theater director of the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. She recently hosted the Voces de San Antonio, where I had the privilege of meeting her, and where her dedication to storytelling and community building have shined brightly. And it was during this inspiring event that we had the pleasure of meeting her. And she told me her compelling story really quick. It was a 2-minute elevator pitch. But I mean, let me tell you, folks, if you've never been to a storytelling event, I know the knee jerk is like, what is that? Or what do you mean? And I didn't know. And, I'm what you call a uncultured swine, right? I play music, and excuse me, it's been a day. But thank you so much, Marisela. A fun fact, that is my sister's name as well. So I love that name. Now Marisela Barrera, Marisela is her name. So, she, this incredible thing we're doing, of course, it's, we're doing a Q&A because we're storytelling in music, the song that sets you up for, what we're going to be doing, what we're talking about. I actually have my own storytelling to do in a few weeks. And so I'm excited about that. And I'm looking at Marisela like, wow, what an incredible event. And tell us about yourself. I mean, I know there's a lot of stuff we have to talk about, and we don't have a lot of time because an hour goes by quick when you're with Sunny Sauceda or with Marisela. I haven't even got to the good stuff yet. I'm keep talking and talking. But tell me, tell everybody who's watching, we have the Texas Folklore Society, liking our posts. So I know they have to be tuning in. Of course, thank you to our board who's watching, and our executive director, Alicia, Oliver, our communications director, Mariela Fierer, if I think I said that right, who's doing an amazing job in facilitating this Q&A. So thank you, Marisela. Tell me, how did your journey get started in storytelling and acting, all that? Give us, tell me about you.
Well, it was growing up in the 70s in the Rio Grande Valley, in Alamo, Texas, on Crockett Street, attending Bowie Elementary. It was sort of destiny that I arrived in San Antonio. So there's the 30-second elevator pitch for you, Sunny. Before I go on, I just want to say what an honor it is for me to be here chatting with you as one of your super fans who's definitely danced in a circle, as you and, your grupo is playing many a time. So definitely carrying on Texas traditions and really honoring the culture so gracefully. So first of all, we appreciate you, Sunny.
Oh, thank you.
And
don't make me cry. It's starting to cry.
Hey, that's what storytelling does. It's like we laugh, we cry, but connecting with Texas folk life makes so much sense. Bringing so much sort of diversity into the idea of being Texan. And that's where sort of we start the storytelling. It's like, what does it mean to be Texan? Well, that's, for me, that's a very interesting question. Growing up in the Valley, sure, you might look at me and say, well, she's, of Mexican descent, 100%, come from the Mexicana heritage, very proud of that. But what it means to be Texan now, breaking the stereotype of a Texan that talk like this, a Texan that, out from West
Right.
Texas, uh, maybe, been out with, growing stuff or writing
Yeah.
stuff, but when we start to break stereotypes, we could be all of that. Texans are so complex. Texans includes people like me, people like you. Sure, I did the sort of more typical Texas things. I am a Texas girl at heart. I was in 4-H when I was growing up and managed to raise lambs and rabbits. I was a baton twirler as well, so juggling uh, batons and fire and all sorts of stuff. So
Oh,
leaning into like the typical things of being a Texan. My first concert was George Strait. So how
awesome.
much more Texan do you want to be? Well, you could be Tejana. That's how
Yeah.
much Texan you could be, and that is leaning into the roots that were here before we were. The Mexicano roots, the indigenous roots, the native stories, and so that's when the rich history that we know to be Texan sort of merges, and so we have the indigenous stories, and then we have the Texas stories, we have the Mexicano stories, and
Mhm.
that then defines us as the ultimate mestizas, of the universe.
I
We
love it.
mixed background, yeah.
Well, that's so incredible. Thank you for your kind words, and don't be making me cry, Marisela.
Haven't
I'm
even
a big
started
crybaby.
yet.
Uh, you know, you're from. So you said you're from. Remind me, you're from the valley, or you're
Yeah,
you're from the
Alamo,
valley.
Texas.
So
Yeah, where are you
so
from?
I'm from the country. I'm
Yeah.
a redneck Mexican for real. I really am from the country. I mean, we come from where we say hi to all the folks passing by, and what an incredible. It's just it was so much fun growing up in the country,
That's
and
would
yeah,
you I have a question for you. Would you all ever call that like being from a rancho?
yeah, yeah, El rancho, yeah,
Rancho.
uh, we call it from being, yeah, you're ranchero or stuff like that, so it's, um, but it really is. I'm from that's where we come from, it's so incredible. Uh, but tell me about what draws your, storytelling. What makes it an art form? Like, how do you approach like crafting your stories? Like, tell me how. I mean, I'm all ears, and I'm super. I'm like a walking sponge. I want to learn. Like for people that have never, they don't know what it is. So how do you approach that?
We all have stories to tell. We all have stories that are have been gifted to us through generations,
Yeah.
that we have created of our own sort of experiences, and so first and foremost, the idea that we all have a story to tell is sort of revolutionary. Once you believe that, truly believe that you have a story to tell, then the next step is being compelled to tell it, not just for comadres, for the primos, for the kitchen tables, but to take it out and so that more people can connect with your story. And so we all know those storytellers in our familias, those storytellers where we're sitting around in the kitchen telling some people call it the good cheese man.
The good cheese, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now we have those stories, but we also have those connections to our past where we have been disconnected, those stories that aren't told, those stories that need to be quiet, those stories that
Yeah.
maybe traditionally need to be put in the like in the past been put in the closet. Now it's time
Yeah.
to bring those stories out. Now it's time to embrace those stories. Now it's time to let your communities know that it's those very stories that maybe we were told to hide that
Hmm.
actually connect us. Those are the good stories, to tell, because
Yes.
those are stories that make us human. Those stories that we heard growing up, it's like, shh, No, we don't talk about that. It's like, actually, if you're sort of break that silence and start to tell those stories, and then we can
Yes.
start to find our own like identity through those stories, and not just our own identity, but that's how we connect with our community, is by sharing those stories. And so the art of it comes with, I guess, having breaking that silence and
Yeah.
sharing it out loud, like perhaps in front of a mic, and hopefully with some buena gente that are willing to sort of be open to accept the stories. And you'd be surprised, just like at the library,
Yes.
it's standing room only, and the storytellers, many of whom were at the mic for the first time,
Yes.
we're like, whoa, that was a lot. That was actually fun, to do that.
Absolutely. I didn't realize how much of a story I was, a storyteller that I was, and I always talk about that. But oh my gosh, here we are, right?
Yeah.
Uh, your performances are often, centered on Tejana and Chicana narratives. What do you feel is the most important message or emotion that you aim to convey through your stories? Because I know you've done this quite often. So what? I mean, depending on the story, like as an example, whichever one you just showed, we showed the what was it the what was it called? Oh my god, it's slipping my mind. It's been a day.
It
Uh,
was
but whichever story you want to share, like what
it
what
was a
emotion,
donkey
what
lady.
message are we trying? Yeah, what are we trying to? What are you trying? What are we
What are we doing with
spending?
the donkey lady? Yeah, what are we spinning?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, Sonny, another question for you. Have you heard about the donkey lady legend?
I think I have. I think I have. I mean, I've
Okay,
heard of La Llorona.
yeah, yeah.
Of La
Well, it
Llorona.
comes, they live on the same block. Pretty sure. The donkey lady is a legend here from San Antonio specifically, a hybrid woman donkey, superstar legend of Las Americas, specifically here in San Antonio. And so, what I like about these urban legends that are specifically Tejana, like the like the donkey lady, like even like you
Uh-huh.
mentioned La Llorona, and we have La
Yes.
Chusa. And what are really interesting about these is that we each have different versions that we've heard, and maybe we've heard of the character and then don't know so much of the backstory. And
Okay.
so it's the backstory that actually sort of is very insightful. Why? Because we could insert ourselves into that story. And so it becomes a way to transmit like personal narratives, like, I'm going to argue that Tejanas have a little bit of La Llorona. We have a little bit of the donkey lady. We have a little bit of Lechuza within us. So that is
Really?
my
Why do you say that? Why do you? Okay, now I want to know why.
now.
Why? Yeah. Why would you say that we all are the donkey woman or La Llorona, or not we, but we as in y'all, or
Yeah,
you all?
you all.
I say
Uh,
y'all.
I mean, I say y'all too. I say y'all
Y'all.
too. Well, let's take Lechuza.
Okay.
Lechuza is an owl woman.
Yes.
She's a shapeshifter.
Yes.
She is misunderstood. She's like frequently portrayed as like an aged woman, an
Mhm.
elder. And so when you take that story and those, brief connections of the story, and think, well, how do I connect to that? And how does my fellow Tejanas and other women really connect to that? Topics of aging gracefully, and that there is power in aging, and sort of
Mm.
being an elder. And so, in my version of Lechusa, she's
Mhm.
gaining power, and she's gaining more power and strength and confidence as she's aging. As she's making these connections to go after all the necios in Texas, to go after, everyone sort of causing disruption based on judgment in Texas, and elsewhere. She's not about borders at all.
No borders for her. Like.
Right. Yeah. Her point of view, she could fly over them and she knows all the tea, And so, in that way, and seeing ourselves in La Lechuza or the
Excuse me.
donkey lady or La Llorona, we could see a lot, we could reveal a lot about ourselves, and in that way, some people can sort of connect with that and either maybe disrupt stereotypes. And that's what I like to do.
Well, that is so interesting. And if you don't mind, can we go back? Can we go back in time? We know that you've I did do some research on you,
Oh my.
and I googled you. I was like, and so we know that you were the artistic director for Cara Mia. Is that correct? Did I get that wrong? Or is that right?
That is right, indeed.
So I mean, and you were the theater director for the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. And I mean, how did those experiences influence your storytelling style or at all? Or, I'm sure that had something, I mean, your background is pretty vast. So, how did that influence you?
I'm 53, and people are like, "Why do you give your age?" I'm like, "Because I'm proud. I'm proud of
Proud.
that experience."
Yeah,
Like I said, I'm like Lechusa. There's strength in aging, right? And that experience. Um,
absolutely.
But in the Valley, if you also Google Far San Juan Alamo drama, class of 1990, we had a fantastic theater director that really instilled the power of storytelling in so many of his students. And so I took that to
Yeah.
Dallas to study acting and also found Mexican American studies. And so finally, I was able to unravel the stories of the land I was living on. In the Rio Grande Valley, we don't hear stories about what happened to the Mexicanos, in the border region throughout the decades. We don't learn so much about the history of, this was Mexico and how the process went about to it become Texas now. And so it was very interesting for me to learn about that history of our region and try to merge it with my first passion of storytelling. And sort of graduating then, had the opportunity to study acting, which was weird, at the time,
I,
for Valley Girl.
I don't know
um,
the first thing about acting. So that's another one that I mean, I don't have any formal experience. I can't say that I went to an acting school, but I do say being a musician it's a performance of music, but also performance for the visuals. You gotta, we were talking about that at the Voces de San Antonio. Like you, you may not be feeling good that day.
yeah,
You know, the water heater broke or something messed up at the house, or you're
yeah.
upset. You still got to go out there. So when it pertains to acting, I mean, tell me about acting. Like when you go through an acting course, and what do they talk about? I mean, I don't
Well,
like.
Sunny, I think all of us can agree that it's like performing is in your blood. It's like what you do. I don't think anyone can be taught that. You know, so trust. We know, and so those skills actually transfer to the acting. Now, just imagine yourself just putting sort of stepping into someone else's shoes. Another character, and then thinking about, well, how does that character talk? How does that character walk? How does that
Yes.
character dress? What is that character obsessed by? All these different questions that goes through in terms of acting training. But what the most important takeaway for an actor is to be a good listener and to listen and to be in the moment. What I like to say, when I'm like on stage, if I'm not thinking
Mhm.
about like enchiladas, like I'm good, like I'm in the moment. You know what I'm saying?
I
So for me, I had to practice, and train myself to be in the moment. And people are like can become good listeners, and can become sort of unthinking about their body, as well, because that's another thing an actor needs to forget about who they are, essentially. know themselves first, but then step into someone else's, sort of make believe and actually believe it, and go through that process. So definitely very much of an education in being in the moment, being a good listener, and then knowing yourself. And so for me, it was knowing about my Mexican and American identity, and learning that, and then being able to apply that, into new plays. But back in the 90s, Sunny, there weren't too many plays. There were some, but not
Hmm.
too many plays about Tejanas. So that becomes a problem, an
True.
issue. And so what do we do? Like you write music, And so what do a lot of us do? Then we write performances, and they're not your traditional plays. We do different types of more storytelling plays about our identity or growing up, or about our culture, our family, and these themes that resonate really across borders, across cultures as well, and across different types of people, really, because at the center, it's about um, the challenges we face, just like you said, living in this world that's so complex and sometimes very scary.
Well, I mean, you're so right on so many fronts. And, I today I'm playing Sunny Sauceda, the guy that's doing a Q&A for the Texas Folklife Festival. I mean, Texas
Mhm.
Folklife um, Q&A series, and it's so you're so right about that. It's so true. Everything's a performance, everything's a role, right? And it's when I what did I do when I got there to your event? I went out and, hey, I'm Sunny Sauceda with the Texas Folk Life. I have a question, right? So it's
Mhm.
so interesting. And folks, if you're tuning in, if you just tuned in, welcome to the Texas Folk Life Q&A sessions. We're talking, this is storytelling. I'm here with Marisela Barrera, who is an incredible storyteller. And if you have any questions for her, I have about 50 questions for her. This is going to be an all night thing. I'm just kidding. It's going to be we have so many questions to ask you, Mari. And, but you're so right. I learned from one of my friends who's in media. She said the most important part of interviewing somebody is to learn to listen and let them share their story. And here we are. You know,
100%.
it's It's so intriguing. Now, the event that we were at was Voces de San Antonio. Tell us about Voces de San Antonio, which is a very cool thing.
Thank you. And, thank you for being there. When you did come up to ask a question and you said, I don't need a mic. And then I turned around, I'm like, oh, that's Sunny
Oh,
Sauceda. It's like, wow.
mira,
So this program is a program that's made possible through Gemini Inc., which is San Antonio's Center for writers of all ages and all backgrounds. Gemini Inc., in collaboration with the San Antonio Public Library, in particular the Latina collection over there at the Central Library downtown, and Sara, who shout out to Sara and
yes,
shout
De
out
La
to
Rosa.
Gemini Inc. Yes, who are fabulous in terms of bringing the buena vibras to the
Yes.
library, because it's not about being a writer, actually, is not, for me, not about sitting down and sort of cranking my head and trying to come up with the first sentence. It's actually about telling stories. And so sitting around the circle, the storytelling circle, without a pen, why just telling the story that we're interested in sharing, without even thinking about writing it down yet. That, for me, is what storytelling is about. And so this Voces de San Antonio invites gente to come and share their stories. Um, Hopefully, they're usually sort of nonfiction, which means they're stories that they've lived, stories they've heard passed down, stories from their neighborhoods.
Hmm.
Not always, though. Sometimes they're, fictions, and so it's really based on what the storyteller wants to share, and work on. And so, for that particular one, we came together a few Saturdays. talked about our stories, shared them, and then sort of tried out some other types of storytelling prompts, because I'm like performance, and so I bring in some of that just to test it out, just to
Sure.
practice. And then we share them in front of an audience, and people like Sunny Sauceda from the Texas Folklife show up. Yeah. And it's exciting,
And,
and yeah.
I'll be honest with you. When I heard storytelling, I said, well, I don't know what it was about. I was not sure what it was. And it was so eye-opening. And I tell you, I can't remember his name. Is it Carrillo, Mr. Carrillo?
Carlos?
The guy with the accordion.
Yes, Carlos. Yeah.
Carlos Carrillo. He went up there with the accordion, and this was a story about, I think he was talking about his aunt. I think his aunt, and they were talking about like how she brought music and food and artists together, and how he learned how to, like, she taught him how to dance. I think something like that.
Mhm.
And I always talk about that, and that's when it really struck a chord with me. Like,
Mm.
when I was like, oh, like the light bulb went off inside my, like a ding.
Yeah.
Oh, this was okay. I get it. And then he had the accordion, so he had my attention. I was like, oh, he's gonna play accordion. I was like, oh, I was like, and then I was almost gonna be, if you want me to help you, I'll go help you.
Ah,
But it was
he was
incredible.
teasing us. Yeah.
It was cool. It was incredible because he what he talked about, and then he started singing like "Toma mi
Mhm.
corazón," and I was like, it took me back. Like Dick Clark said, the music is the soundtrack of your life,
De veras. Yeah.
right? And it really stuck with me. I was like, whoa, I had never seen storytelling in that light,
Mhm.
and it was incredible. What an incredible! I wish more people would go. Yeah. So that's why we're here. We want to, shine the light on storytelling because it's so important. And
Definitely.
it's, I think that, do you feel, or how do you feel about storytelling? Do you see it's a way to preserve and celebrate our culture, Tejana, Chicana culture? Is that I mean,
It is indeed cultural preservation. It is.
right?
It's also a process of excavating. When we dig out those stories that maybe, like you said, from memories, from
Yes.
stories that have been passed down, and that's when you know that's a core sort of uh, story that we need to preserve, which is why we tell it out loud, which is why also a partner with this Voces de San Antonio is also a nonprofit that has a low power radio station here in San Antonio. It's known as Empower House, Empower Radio. And so this is just one of many programs that they do, just empowering. And so through their recording, so that afternoon of stories was recorded and will air in low power radio and then eventually make its way on their website. So we are preserving them. And actually, right before we tuned in together, I went into the Texas Folklife website because I was interested to read the mission statement. And of course, many of us know I'm a huge conjunto fan, and many of us know what the Texas Folklife does for conjunto music, with
Hmm.
the accordion gatherings and things like that. But I was so intrigued and really, really excited to read about the storytelling and the story keeping aspects of the mission, um,
Yes.
because that is so important. They go hand in hand, really. With every music, there's always good stories. There's always good stories surrounding our love for music. So it's really good synergy there.
Absolutely 100%. And you know what? With storytelling in the arts, do you feel that uh, it plays a role in advocating for social justice or addressing cultural issues? Right now there's a whole lot of happening, right? And so I kind of almost position. How do you feel about that? What do you? Do you think that it's? I mean, I guess it is a way for us to advocate, and how are y'all? How are storytellers using the power of the story? How I like to say the power of storytelling
Mhm.
to either advocate or address these issues, if at all.
Well, one thing that what you alluded to is that there is power in our stories, right? And what
Hmm.
good are these stories going to do if we don't share them? If we don't start to, and not start, but
Mm.
continue, because
Yeah.
we've generations ago started. We are just ever increasing the presence of breaking stereotypes. It's very easy.
Yes.
It's like growing up on the border and having experienced that firsthand, as opposed to somebody not living on the border, that
Yeah.
really doesn't know the true story, and that there's humanity that joins us, that the plight of the immigrant is one of um, of hard work, of
Hmm.
uh, journey, just trying to sort of improve your sort of uh, pathway in life, and many times for your family, and
Hmm.
that's what we're sort of writing with. We're sort of continuing traditions that our abuelas taught.
Yes.
We are continuing traditions that breakthrough scholars such as Gloria Alzandua taught us. They're teaching. They taught us to live in our in our truths. Whether it be English and Spanish, whether it be just a choque, as is called, with the choque of life on the border. Well, now
Oh,
that choque is everywhere. That
choke.
choque of, like, the sort of the clash, the mix of cultures. Now we're taking that to other parts, for example, in the US.
Hey.
And it's going to take stories really to break those down, for people that might not get the entire picture, might get the stereotype, might believe in the language, the sort of violent metaphors that the medias are feeding us, and it's like, we're here, we're cool, and we're not going anywhere.
No, we're
That's
not. I
the
mean,
truth.
you mentioned somebody. Can you go back and talk to me about that?
Gloria Anzaldúa.
Tell me about Gloria.
Gloria Anzaldúa, a writer, poet, scholar from the Rio Grande Valley. She has passed away, but she leaves with us a legacy of work about sharing our stories, living in our truths, finding what she called conocimiento,
Mm-hmm.
which is coming into our truths, in our communities, and in a sense, sharing them. And so she really made pathways in many directions in terms of being a Chicana, being
Mm-hmm.
queer, being a feminist, being, all these things that
Mm-hmm.
uh, on the border, especially, even, when I grew up there in the 70s and 80s, was sort of like, ya cálmate, cálmate, Marisela, you know? And so
No,
now
not you.
we don't have to cálmate, we don't have to be silent, definitely not. The storytelling becomes then a route to connect, and it becomes a route actually also for advocacy, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, well, every day, not just now, but especially now, because we're living in the now, is
Yes.
when we need to share those, really, and say them in different spaces, and openly, the flaws and also the joy of our culture. And I'm so, sort of like very grateful to be able to do that on a daily basis, as part of a practice.
Was she one of your heroes, or I mean, who were the people that you looked up to, or that you kind of, we all have our, the where the mark, right, where the bar's at. Like, this is where the bar's at, and like for me, for the rest of my life, forever and ever until I die, like, it's always going to be Steve Jordan, right? Esteban
Mm.
Gornal. Like, who is that person for you? Who is your Steve Jordan?
Steve Jordan.
I mean, it's sort of like I mean, there's a lot of things you do, right? So, like in acting and
Yeah.
story, like, is there somebody that you saw when you were, as a young student? Like, is it that lady, or would it be somebody else that you saw in school or on TV, or who would
That's a
that
good
person be for you?
for me. Well, growing up, PSJA, it was our own local like drama program that finally sort of taught me how to advocate for art. And so I remember back in the late 80s writing letters to Luis Valdez, who was the founder of El Teatro Campesino, who worked alongside Cesar Chavez. And so we would write letters to him, in my drama class, asking for the rights to produce Zoot Suit. And so,
Oh,
for many years I was, very very much looking up to, and to this day, at Teatro Campesino, the work of Luis Valdez, the work of Sherry Moraga, who's a Chicana playwright, the work of the founder of Garamia, Adelina Anthony, back in the 90s outside of school, in Dallas, Cora Cardona, doing uh, teatro, to a community that was really growing quickly over there in the 90s in Dallas, and then the people up close as well. A mentor to me now is my 20-year-old daughter, and
really?
yeah, Valentina Inez, who also serves. So I think, if we could all refresh, our mentors, for
Hmm.
the time and what we practice, I think that's a healthy thing. Like, so I think I've had different mentors that I've looked up to, over
Yeah,
the years, but, I'll settle in like today, my kid, who's
that's
uh,
awesome.
very much like I look up to as a person who is not afraid to leave Texas, who is not afraid to speak her mind, and just admire really up close and personal. So as a mom, it's like, and for most of her life, a single mom, single parent. That becomes a very important thing, a connection, with the people up close to you. Yeah. So I could name so many scholars, of course, Gloria Anzaldúa, Chedi Moraga, and
Like, you
yeah,
blow my mind over and over and over. I'm like, what? I wish I would have taken my notepad with me. Oh my
my
gosh.
abuela, my
Yes.
abuelas, it's like it's all going. But if we think about refreshing the mentors that, or the people we look up to that are up close, the sort of the heroes in our lives,
And
up
when you say
close.
refresh, what do you mean by refresh? Can you shed some light on that?
Well,
Like,
I think, yeah, if our sort of journey in life is one of growth, that means we put ourselves in uncomfortable places to grow out, to discover new things, right? And so
hmm,
within those pathways, we could like find new people that we admire, so that my person, that I admired, who I still do, like in the, I guess, the 80s,
yes.
is 80s Marisela. I needed to know about Teatro Campesino and Luis Valdez, but then I learned more. And then I
Yes.
learned about Guillermo Gomez Peña and La Pocha Nostra, who's a Chicano group, out of Mexico City and San Francisco. And so I learned about their work in the 90s. And so I needed that. And then refresh. I learned about Shari Moraga. I
Cherry.
learned about these playwrights, Chicano playwrights that were working and producing work, telling our stories, in more sort of produced
Yeah.
ways. Now, in that way, like that becomes more of like a commitment when you
Mhm.
produce plays.
Yeah.
A lot of the storytellers think, well, how can I minimize all the extra ondas, you know, and what is most important is the story, and how can we tell it? Sometimes with music, with live music, it becomes really important to tell that. So So by refresh, ultimately, it's
I I
it's
had
sort of,
never seen it that way. You're right, though. Yeah, we keep refreshing our and I was just doing that today.
yeah,
I met an incredible woman who is in the arts and has all this I mean incredible amount of experience on next level, right? Doing the things that I am projecting to do, and I'm like, oh my god, and that's incredible. So you're right. Your your mentors are you're always refreshing. Your sphere of influence is always evolving according
right.
to where you're at in your life.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
so important that you say that. And it's beautiful that you say about your daughter because typically in the Latino world, what do we, you know, it's part of our makeup. Typically Mexicanos or Latinos, we kind of don't value the youth's uh, intelligence or what they have to bring to the table. You're a little kid. What do you know? But I mean, I have a son who has cerebral palsy, and we learn from him every day.
Mhm.
He's mil besos. We call him mil
Mhm.
besos,
Oh, that's beautiful.
and
See, that's the story. That's the
yes,
beginning of, you tell stories through your songs,
yes.
and so like you just like listening to you and about your family. It's just like I think we all want more. We want maybe the Sunny Sauceda memoir, like performance wise with live music. Boom.
There. I was just talking about that earlier today. I was talking about this thing we're doing, but that's incredible what you're talking about, and that's so beautiful with your daughter, and because a lot of us, again, you remember, what? ¿Qué sabes, mocosía? Tú no sabes nada, no te puedes ni limpiar la cola, right? You remember that? I mean,
I remember.
you
I
remember, you know what I'm saying, and so that's so important, and you've been doing this for a long time, and like, is there something that, like a memorable performance that stands out to you, whether it's acting or storytelling, something that for me, it's, I mean, for sure, the story, the Voces de San Antonio is gonna be one of the moments in my life where I'm like, that's the moment that it clicked to me, like, oh, I get it now. But it's something that storytelling to me so far is something you have to experience. It's something that you can't just watch it on a screen. You
Mhm.
got to go, you got to feel that energy, you got to feel
Mhm.
that vibe,
Mhm.
you got to feel the nerves because you see these people that have never done it. And I'm a
Exactly.
performer. So I'm like, he's nervous, like, just relax.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we talk about breath work definitely in that process, and that's beautiful that you say that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sunny. That's really because that's what really the core of storytelling is, that it's for everybody,
Yes.
and the whole sort of premise circling back to um, everyone has a story. Everyone has something to say that is of value, and that we have something to learn from, and that's part of Voces de San Antonio, which I know we're just sort of beginning to create a community of people that connect, like already in those ways that have sort of worked with us, and then that we see, out in the wild in the community, continuing. One shout out to one of the storytellers there that day, Rachel Delgado, who told the story of death and what it sort of uh, a fear of being like alone, in your home with your gatos, and I can't give that story, the comedy, the angle
Yeah.
that Rachel, but super shout out to Rachel Delgado, who has sort of taken the opportunities of storytelling in many different directions and with many different organizations. Like we'll see her at the
Mhm.
Esperanza Peace and Justice Center's Peace Market, at the mic, sharing a story in between music sets, type of thing. Like,
Yes.
so that becomes very exciting to see. So that's very like affirming, to be part of that, to be able to have lived like a life of practice and be part of that circle in that way to facilitate. And for me, performance wise, this my new project. I always, we always have critics on our shoulder saying, "No, you can't do this, you can't do that." It's like, so I always thought like, "No, I can't like do this or that," even though I'd done stuff, but I never actually wrote music with
Mm.
musicians about a story I wanted to tell.
Oh.
And so that's sort of taking myself out of my comfort zone, so to speak, and working with Joe Reyes and Odie, who are local musicians, and being able to create and collaborate in a way, a storytelling still, like story's the center of it, but be able to collaborate it musically was, very affirming and very fun, you
Yeah.
know, and so that's the next thing. And so when we did that at Jumpstart in August, we
Uh-huh.
premiered that. It's called Lechusa Guide to the Lone Star State.
Le-
And
Lechusa Guide to the Lone. I love that.
thank you.
And what is that gonna? Can you tell us
We
a little bit about it, or what it
yeah,
means? Or
we performed in August and then we performed in Luminaria. We performed at UTSA. So
uh-huh.
it's like a sort of like a road show already about Lechusa, who's this owl woman bruja, and what the audience meets her on her final night in human form before she shapeshifts forever into Lechusa. So up until this point, she had been shapeshifting. So she could
Ah,
be madre, she could be, she sort of like comes in and out, sort of like going after all the necios, and people like disappeared fathers, people like like necio, like abusers, stuff like that. And so we are sort of led into her perspective. So it's sort of like a Q&A with Lechusa. So any question, just sort of things, what her backstory is, how she was
that-
born. It just has a lot of her character and backstory that comes into the moment then when she shapeshifts for the last time through song. Yeah, so it's a fun
it's a
thing.
fun thing. It's a thing. We have a comment from Paul Franklin. I don't know where he's from. Let me see. Oh, he left a long comment. Let me see.
Oh,
Uh, this is a pretty lengthy here. Let's. We're gonna run out of time. I'm just kidding. We're not. Sunny, thank you for bringing Marisela to your event. Marisela, you uh, and your work are appealing. I believe everyone can relate to your stories, perhaps in different ways, but they are shared common experience, and not only for the Mexican culture. When when will you tell your next story or two? What will they be about? And would you ever tell someone else's story? Ooh, somebody else's story. So
oh.
you told us about La Lechuza, right? But would you ever tell somebody else's story?
Um, Thank you, Paul, for the question. Um, so someone else's story. I've told, like, there's I guess writing strategies about composite stories. So we pull from a like from many different people or stories we've heard,
Hmm.
create like a new whole. So we remix a lot of the stories that we've been told, and so in that way, I sort of remix others' stories that I've experienced myself firsthand, or or heard. Yeah. So in that way, I do tell stories that I've from others. To write like what we call a play in the more traditional sense,
Hmm.
I don't know if that's my jam anymore. I used to write those.
You
Uh,
used
but
to.
yeah, yeah, and I have
For the
some.
right price, Paul, she'll do it. I'm just kidding.
Huh?
For the right price, she will,
Yeah,
Paul.
right, right. Yeah, no,
I'm
I
just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
no.
Another girl.
Well, it's like the economics of storytelling. We haven't even touched on that, but I did actually. That reminds me, I did write a play about the Chili Queens of San Antonio that played at the Whitty Museum in Rep for many years, and so I have
Oh,
that play about history. The history of the Chili Queens for kids, and I've written other plays. in the 90s. I wrote a
I,
play about the Mexican Revolution, so
how do
maybe
you
I'll
write?
start.
How do you write a play? But let me make this. Saludos a Carlos Hernandez de la Cultura Vive Comedian. Saludos a Mr. Carlos Hernandez. He's an amazing man, and he is uh, just been somebody I could talk to and really lean on because he's been in the arts for many, many years, and he's an influential man in the Rio Grande Valley. So saludos a Mr. Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for tuning in and but I mean, how do you write a play? I don't even know the first thing, Brian. I mean, that seems like that's a whole other hour talk, but that is incredible. I mean, I can only dream of that. I don't.
You can
That's
write a play, Sonny. You have many plays inside you, and what we do is lean into our own stories and our own talents, like musically. And
yeah.
I have no doubt you could set your stories to music in that way.
I
Yeah.
mean, that would be so cool to do. And one day when I'm old and I'm retired, that'll never happen. Number one,
Yeah.
that'll never
Yeah.
happen. You know,
You want a tip?
give me a tip.
I mean, based on just the amount of music that you have, it might be that you already have like a performance, a play, a musical, like within your music that you already have. So if you find some sort of common thread, within some songs, and then you have stories in between, you could thread them together, with either yourself as the narrator or have like actors, come in and sort of narrate the scenes in between the songs, and you have a play. So you have plays within you, definitely.
You're right. Because the funny thing about when I put records together, that's what I'm thinking. Like everything has to tie together. Like so everything has to make sense. Like we're not gonna put songs that have no relevance to the other one.
Yeah,
Oh my God. Again,
it's
Marisela,
a lot more
this is
practice.
becoming a pattern, ma'am. This is becoming a pattern.
We have stuff to do, Sonny. You know,
I think so. That's what it sounds like.
yeah, we have
What do
to.
y'all think, folks? I mean, Maricela, the time has just gone by like that, and it's my fault. I'm so long-winded, and it's so interesting to have. Paul Franklin is from Buffalo, New York, and he's been in San Antonio for 32 years. So thank you, Paul, for your comment, and thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to share this live broadcast with all your peeps and get them to share it, and then them to share it, and them to share it, and keep it going. And we're gonna turn storytellers out of everybody. We're gonna make everybody a storyteller.
for
They
sure.
already are. They just don't know it,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? They just don't know it. Do you have any final thoughts for storytellers? In the audience that's watching. We gotta it's easy to forget because we've been doing this for so long, like being a musician, being a producer. You're all of them, right? You're everything under the sun. And I guess since we are storyteller centric tonight, could you give us like some tips and like some final thoughts on somebody who maybe wants to do that or has no idea, like me? I'm still new. And any thoughts or any kind of wisdom you want to share on that?
Um, Let me take off my cowboy hat for this one.
Watch out.
All right. And I'll talk directly here uh, to gente, is that there's an urgent need in our communities right now to share our stories. There's an urgent need right now in our community to connect. There's an urgent need in the U.S., especially right now, to tell the story, uh, your stories, your immigrant stories, your abuela stories, your stories of growing up in Texas, your stories of challenges, the joys, especially those of us that are fortunate to live in a multicultural type of vida, that we can bounce in between the English and Spanish, or that we have those roots, to our tierra here in Texas. And so the first thing that we need to do is connect with each other and tell our stories. And so I urge everybody um, to begin to let that simmer, because that simmering is what gets our ganas up, and so we need that ganas. And so if you have the ganas, you have community to explore this storytelling. Gemini Inc. is convening another group of storytellers in May is the next one, and this one's going to be at the Cortez Library in South San Antonio.
Outside.
Yes, outside, right there. So, definitely, it's right there. There's, it's free. Thanks to Gemini Inc., thanks to the San Antonio Public Library, who believe in that. Even though, like the San Antonio Public Library, it's about books. Well, no, like now it's truly like a cultural center. It's truly emerging and a meeting of different types. Todos, juntamos and really connect, because that's what we need to do right now is uplift our gente, uplift our stories, uplift the people that are orbiting around us, that want to instill fear in our communities, and we're here to really stay strong by not only sharing our stories, but by connecting to each other and finding out ways to help each other.
That is so beautiful. So well said on Alec. The knee jerk typically is that most people feel like, oh, who's going to care about me? But everybody does care. I would have to piggyback off of what you said, and you said it so well. How can people reach you, or how can people find you for events? And, I know you do all kinds of, I know you have a musical group. I know you act, you produce. I mean, this is so many things. How can people reach you? Can you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you? And, is there
Sure.
a website? And
Yeah, I do have a website, mariselabarrera.com.
okay.
So feel free there, or Instagram, I am La Marisela with an S. With an S.
Okay. La Marisela. La Marisela.
La Marisela, yeah.
La
That's
Marisela.
that's it. But definitely wanting to connect with like-minded folks and artists, and those that are new to the craft, like me coming and forming a musical group when I was 50. It's never too late to tell our stories.
Ever. What an incredible story. And Marisela, thank you so much for being on our actual first Storytellers Q&A, and our Dr. Janelle Ramirez. That is her domain, and we're going to probably continue some more of these. And what an incredible story, what an incredible life you've had, and you're so inspirational to many of us. And as the brother of 7 sisters, I mean, yeah, it's very powerful, and I admire that about you. And that's it's very, I think that it's work. You have to be very, very courageous to do that kind of work, because not everybody would put themselves out there like that. Most people are, number one, because they're a minority, and number two, a Latina, and that's incredible. So congratulations and kudos to you. And I commend you, and I, thank you for what you're doing, and you're inspiring generations of Latinas and future artists, and people will watch this, and young girls. Think about it. I mean, I have a 14, going to be 14-year-old daughter, and I'm sure she'll be watching this like, oh, that's something that I can do. So thank you so much for what you do and for your contributions to the arts. We really appreciate you being on this Q&A. So folks, thank you. Marisela Barrera, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thank you. We'll see you out the next one, folks. We got to get out of here. I'm headed to the Valley, to the RGV, your hometown, your neck of the woods. And so grateful to you. Thank you to Mariela Ferrer for facilitating this, and Dr. Alicia Oliver for allowing us to do this. And this is part of her vision of bringing everybody together. So I'm just happy to be able to be her extension of her arms, her eyes, and what she wants to do. So what a blessing. So thank you so much, Marisela. We'll see you at the next one. We'll see you in May.
Okay, we'll see ya. Adios.
Adios.